In this video, I'm going to set up a brand new company in Odoo and walk through the exact settings I always configure at the start of an implementation. Not just the basics, but the settings that directly affect how the system behaves operationally. We're going to do this in a clean sequence. First, we'll create the company. Then we'll adjust language options, enable accounting, turn on intercompany transactions, and finally configure the outgoing mail server. Because if email isn't working, approvals, invoices, payroll documents, and customer communication can all break in ways that look random. This is also the starting video for a settings playlist. In the next videos, we'll take each setting we touched today and go deeper. What it changes in Odoo, what it impacts, and what can go wrong if it's not configured correctly. So let's start from the top with creating the new company. So I'm in Settings, Users and Companies, and the first thing I'm doing is creating a new company. When you create a new company in Odoo, you're not just adding a name. You're creating a separate environment for accounting, documents, taxes, journals, and system behavior. That's why company structure matters so much for people doing multi-company setups, payroll, or anything that has compliance and reporting requirements. I click New, and I'm naming this company Odoo Payroll Company. And you'll notice Odoo gives us the company record with basic information fields like address, phone, email, website, and tax ID. Even if you don't fill everything right now, it's important to know that some of these fields later feed into printed documents, invoices, payroll documents, and email templates. For example, the company address can show on invoices and reports. The company email can become the default sender for system messages depending on your configuration. And the tax ID is obviously important for compliance and documents, where it prints automatically. Now, I'll save this company. And once that's saved, the next thing I want to do is confirm I'm operating in the correct company. In Odoo, the company in the top right is not just cosmetic. It determines which journals you see, which taxes apply, and which records you're creating. If you ever feel like something is missing, like journals, accounts, payroll structures, the first question is, am I in the right company? Now we move into languages. I'm going to Settings, General Settings, and go to the Language section. Languages affect the user interface, but also things like templates and how content displays in documents. If you work with employees or customers who need Arabic, Spanish, French, whatever it is, you want to enable the language properly here first, because later the same system will reuse that language for templates and portals. I open Add Languages, and you'll see the list. In this specific setup, I'm leaving English US as the base, but I'm showing you where this is done and what it looks like. In a real implementation, if the company is bilingual, this is where you'd add the second language early, before you build templates, because it saves a lot of rework later. Now we move to the accounting side. Accounting is the foundation that other modules sit on top of: payroll, expenses, inventory valuation, even intercompany automation. So I make sure accounting is enabled for this company, and the reason I'm doing it early is because accounting creates the core structure Odoo uses for posting entries: journals, accounts, default posting logic, and the ability to record transactions properly. If accounting isn't enabled or not configured, people later run payroll and wonder why postings don't reconcile. Or they create invoices and don't see the expected journal entries. So even if you're not ready to do full accounting, you still want the accounting structure enabled correctly so the system behaves predictably. Next, and this is important, I go to intercompany transactions. This setting is a big deal in multi-company environments. When it's enabled, Odoo can automatically generate a corresponding document in the other company. For example, if one company sells to another, it can automatically generate the purchase order or the vendor bill, depending on how you set it up. And you'll notice the checkboxes: creating vendor bills, creating sales orders, creating purchase orders, synchronizing stock moves. These are powerful because they reduce manual work, but they can also create surprises if you don't understand what each option does. So here's the practical point. If you enable vendor bills and sales orders, Odoo is essentially saying, when Company A sells to Company B, I'll create the mirror document on the other side. That's great for automation. But the moment you enable it, you must also decide which journal should be used. Should documents be created as draft or validated? Which warehouse and operation types should be used for stock moves? That's why you see fields like purchase journal and the draft versus validated option. In many real companies, you don't want the system validating automatically until the process is tested, so draft is safer while you test. Once you're confident, then you move to validated. Now I'm going to save these settings. And saving matters because Odoo doesn't apply these globally until they're saved at the company level. Next, we go into outgoing email configuration. And this is where many people get stuck. I scroll to the email section and I enable Use Custom Email Servers. That unlocks the outgoing mail server configuration. Why does this matter? Because Odoo sends invoices, quotations, payroll documents, portal invitations, password resets, approvals, everything by email. If the outgoing server isn't configured, Odoo either won't send emails or it will send them inconsistently, and users will blame Odoo when it's actually an email authentication issue. So I click into the outgoing mail server. I'm creating a new server record, and I'm using Gmail as the example because this is the most common setup for small businesses. For Gmail SMTP, the server is smtp.gmail.com, and the port is typically 587 using TLS. And the key detail is authentication. Google will not accept a normal Gmail password in most cases, especially when two-factor authentication is enabled. So I test the connection, and you can see the exact error. Invalid operation, username and password not accepted, bad credentials. This is extremely common. And this is where people waste hours because they keep retrying the same password. The correct fix is to create a Google app password. App passwords are designed for apps like Odoo that need SMTP access. So I go into the Google account settings, I generate an app password specifically for Odoo, and I copy that 16-character password. Back in Odoo, I paste that app password into the password field, not my normal Gmail password. And then I test connection again. When that works, Odoo is now able to send mail reliably, and that solves issues like invoices not going out, payroll documents failing to send, or customers not receiving portal access emails. So that's the full sequence. We created the company, checked the company context, reviewed language settings, enabled accounting, activated intercompany automation, and set up the outgoing mail server correctly, including handling the real-world Gmail authentication issue with app passwords. This is the first video in our settings playlist, and in the next videos we'll take each of these settings and go deeper. What it changes inside Odoo, what it affects in accounting and operations, and how to configure it safely in production. If you want step-by-step Odoo training that connects configuration to real business outcomes, visit us at www.katylinks.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next settings breakdown.